Welcome back. So we're still with Harriet Jacobs, the incidences in the life of an enslaved girl, and we're coming up to some exciting news. So she's in hiding away from her children, and now the doctor went in search of her in New York, but she was still where she was. So I'll be reading. The doctor came back from New York, of course, without accomplishing his purpose. He had expended considerable money and was rather disheartened. My brother and the children had now been in jail 2 months, and that also was some expense. My friends thought it was a favorable time to work on his discouraged feelings. Mr. Sands sent a speculator to offer him $900 for my brother William and $800 for the 2 children. These were high prices as slaves were then selling, but the offer was rejected. If it had been merely a question of money, the doctor would have sold any boy of Benny's age for $200, but he could not bear to give up the power of revenge. But he was hard pressed for money, and he revolved the matter in his mind. He knew that if he could keep Ellen till she was 15, he could sell her for a high price, but I presumed he reflected that she might die or might be stolen away. At all events, he came to the conclusion that he had better accept the slave trader's offer. Meeting him in the street, inquired when he would leave town. "Today at 10 o'clock, he replied. "Ah, do you go so soon?" said the doctor. "I've been reflecting upon your proposition, and I have concluded to let you have the 3 Negroes if you will say $1,900. After some parley, the trader agreed to his terms. He wanted the bill of sale drawn up and signed immediately, and he had a great deal to attend to during the short time he remained in town. The doctor went to the jail and told William he would take him back in his service if he would promise to behave himself, but he replied that he'd rather be sold. "And you shall be sold, you ungrateful rascal," exclaimed the doctor. In less than an hour the money was paid, the papers were signed, sealed, and delivered, and my brother and children were in the hands of the trader. It was a hurried transaction, and after it was over, the doctor's characteristic caution returned. He went back to the speculator and said, "Sir, I've come to lay you another obligations of $1,000 not to sell any of those Negroes in this state." "You come too late," replied the trader. "Our bargain is closed." He had in fact already sold them to Mr. Sands, but he did not mention it. The doctor required him to put irons on that rascal Bill and to pass through the back street when he took his gang out of town. The trader was privately instructed to concede to his wishes. My good old aunt went to the jail to bid the children goodbye, supposing them to be the speculator's property, and that she would never see them again. As she held Benny in her lap, he said, "Aunt Nancy, I want to show you something." He led her to the door and showed her a long row of marks, saying, "Uncle Will taught me to count. I've made a mark of every day I've been here, and it's 60 days. It's a long time, and the speculator is going to take me and Ellen away. He's a bad man. It's wrong for him to take grandmother's children. I want to go to my mother." End quote. My grandmother was told that the children would be restored to her, but she was requested to act as if they were really to be sent away. Accordingly, she made up a bundle of clothes and went to the jail. When she arrived, she found William handcuffed among the gang and the children in the trader's cart. The scene seemed too much like reality. She was afraid there might have been some deception or a mistake. She fainted and was carried home. When the wagon stopped at the hotel, several gentlemen came out and proposed to purchase William, but the trader refused their offers without stating that he was already sold. And now came the trying hour for that drove of human beings, driven away like cattle, to be sold they knew not where. Husbands were torn from wives, parents from children, never to look upon each other again this side of the grave. There was wringing of hands and cries of despair. Dr. Flint had the supreme satisfaction of seeing the wagon leave town, and Mrs. Flint had the gratification of supposing that my children were going, quote, as far as the wind and water could carry them, end quote. According to the agreement, my uncle followed the wagon some miles until they came to an old farmhouse. There the trader took the irons from William, and he said so. He said, "You are a damned clever fellow. I should like to own you myself. Them gentlemen that wanted to buy you said you was a bright, honest chap, and I must get you a good home. I guess your old master will swear tomorrow and call himself an old fool for selling the children. I reckon he'll never get their mammy back again. I expect she made tracks for the north. Goodbye, old boy. Remember, I've done you a good turn. You must thank me by coaxing all the pretty gals to go with me next fall. That's going to be my last trip. This trading in N-words is a bad business for a fellow that's got a good heart. Move on, you fellas." And the gang went on, God alone knows where. Much as I despise and detest the class of slave traders, whom I regard as the vilest wretches on earth, I must do this man the justice to say that he seemed to have some feelings. He took a fancy to William in the jail and wanted to buy him. When he heard the story of my children, he was willing to aid them in getting out of Dr. Flynn's power, even without charging the customary fee. My uncle procured a wagon and carried William and the children back to town. Great was the joy in my grandmother's house. The curtains were closed and the candles lighted. The happy grandmother cuddled the little ones to her bosom. They hugged her and kissed her and clapped their hands and shouted. She knelt down and poured forth out of her heartfelt prayers of thanksgiving to God. The father was present for a while, and though such a parental relationship as existed between him and the children takes slight hold of the hearts or conscience of the slaveholders, it must be that he experienced some moments of pure joy in witnessing the happiness he had imparted. I had no share in the rejoicings of that evening. The events of the day had not come to my knowledge, and now I will tell you something that happened to me, though you will perhaps think it illustrates the superstitions of slaves. I sat in my usual place on the floor near the window, where I could hear much that was said in the street without being seen. The family had retired for the night, and all was still. I sat there thinking of my children when I heard a low strain of music. A band of serenaders were under the window playing Home, Sweet Home. I listened to the sound. Did not seem like music, but like moaning of children. It seemed as if my heart would burst. I rose from my sitting posture and knelt. A streak of moonlight was on the floor before me, and in the midst of it appeared the forms of my two children. They vanished, but I had seen them distinctly. Some will call it a dream, others a vision. I know not how to account for it, but it made a strong impression on my mind, and I felt certain something had happened to my little ones. I had not seen Betty since morning. Now I heard her softly turning the keys. As soon as she entered, I clung to her and begged her to let me know whether my children were dead or whether they were sold, for I'd seen their spirits in my room, and I was sure something had happened to them. "Lord, child," she said, putting her arms around me, "you's got the high hysterics. I'll sleep with you tonight, 'cause you make a noise and ruin missus. Something has stirred you up mightily. When you's done crying, I'll talk with you. The children is well and mighty happy. I see them myself. Does that satisfy you, dear child? Be still. Somebody will hear you." I tried to obey her. She lay down and was soon sound asleep, but sleep could not come to my eyelids. At dawn, Betty was up and off to the kitchen. The the hours passed on, and the vision of the night kept constantly recurring to my thoughts. After a while, I heard the voices of two women in the entry. In one of them, I recognized the housemaid. The other said to her, "Did you know Linda Brent's children were sold to the speculator yesterday? They say old Master Flint was mighty glad to see them drove out of town. But they say they've come back again. I specs it's all their daddy's doing. They say he bought William too. Lord, how I will take hold of old Master Flint. I'm going round to Aunt Marthy's to see about it." I think part of her, I think she could have seen a premonition or vision. I'm not negating that, but also there's the part of the intrusive thoughts that she's having of her children. PTSD, the trauma of slavery and the trauma of being taken away from your children taken away from you, you're in hiding, very high stress. I bit my lips till the blood came to keep me from crying out. Were my children with their grandmother, or had the speculator carried them off? The suspense was dreadful. Would Betty never come and tell me the truth about it? At last she came, and I eagerly repeated what I had overheard. Her face was one broad, bright smile. "Lord, you foolish thing," she said. "I say gwine to tell you all about it. These gals is eating their breakfast, and Mrs. told me to tell you. But poor critter, they ain't right to keep you waiting, and I see gwine to tell you. Brother, children, and all is bought by the daddy. I see laugh more than enough, thinking about old Massa Flint. Lords, how he will swear. He's got catch this time anyhow, but I must be getting out of this, and them gals will come and catch me." Betty went off laughing, and I said to myself, "Can it be true that my children are free? I have not suffered for them in vain, thank God." Great surprise was expressed when it was known that my children had returned to their grandmothers. The news spread throughout the town, and many a kind word was bestowed on the little ones. Dr. Flint went to my grandmother's to ascertain who was the owner of my children, and she informed him. "I expected as much," said he. "I'm glad to hear it, liar. I have had news from Linda lately, and I shall soon have her. You need never expect to see her free. She shall be my slave as long as I live, and when I'm dead, she shall be the slave of my children. If I ever find out that you or Philip had anything to do with her running off, I'll kill him. And if I meet William in the street, and he presumes to look at me, I will flog him within an inch of his life. Keep those brats out of my sight." As he turned to leave, my grandmother said something to remind him of his doings. He looked back at her as if he could have been glad to strike her to the ground. I had my season of joy and thanksgiving. It was the first time since my childhood that I had experienced any real happiness. I heard of the old doctor's threats, but they no longer had the same power to trouble me. The darkest cloud that hung over my life had rolled away. Whatever slavery might do to me, it could not shackle my children. If I felt a sacrifice, my little ones were saved. It was well for me that my simple heart believed that all had been promised for their welfare. It is always better to trust than to doubt. So I'm going to stop right here. But yeah, that was a bright spark to the whole story. But then we don't know if there are any twists and turns, but we'll just stay in this moment of joy and brightness and happiness in the horrible trauma that was slavery. Tell me what you think. Thanks for listening.